Dear Meredith, there's a hole in my bucket. Dear Meredith, a hole. Land, fix it. Dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, land, fix it. Dear Becca, land, fix it. With what shall I fix it? Dear Meredith, with what shall I fix it? Dear Meredith, with what? With some straw, dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, with some straw, dear Becca, some straw. But the straw is too long, dear Meredith, but the straw is too long, dear Meredith, too long. Then cut it, dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, then cut it, dear Becca, then cut it. With what shall I cut it, dear Meredith, with what shall I cut it, dear Meredith, with what? With a knife, dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, with a knife, dear Becca, a knife. But the knife is too dull, dear Meredith, but the knife is too dull, dear Meredith, too dull. Then sharpen it, dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, then sharpen it, dear Becca, then sharpen it. With what shall I sharpen it, dear Meredith, with what shall I sharpen it, dear Meredith, with what? With a stone, dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, with a stone, dear Becca, a stone. But the stone is too dry, dear Meredith, but the stone is too dry, dear Meredith, too dry. Then wet it, dear Becca, dear Becca, dear Becca, then wet it, dear Becca, then wet it. With what shall I wet it, dear Meredith, with what shall I wet it, dear Meredith, with what? With some water, dear Becca, with some water, dear Becca, some water. Wait,